Chapter 3 Hard-Boiled Men, a novel by Guy Jacobs. For more information, please go to www.hardboiledmen.com. Excerpt read by Anna Becker. I walked out of my small apartment on Bleecker Street and took to another morning of aimless wandering. The university was closed for one of those days of the year that made academia so great. Was it Martin Luther Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, or President's Day? Who cared? None of us academics ever complained about a day off, and neither did our students. It was 10:45 a.m., and the streets of the West Village were full of gay lovers who celebrated their affection for one another in the most expressive ways. Maury always argued that gay lovers had an easier time with love, since they didn't have to deal with the daily clash of cultures between men and women. In an hour, I would meet up with Jacob for lunch. I walked by Washington Square Park and looked at the tall purple flags that hung from the windows of the university. This, of course, was not the university where I was employed. Those who worked here were better than myself at this great scam called university teaching. The sidewalks of the library building were decorated with used book merchants. They sold overpriced books to the many young undergrads who searched for bargain prices on Joyce, Freud, Marx, and Virginia Woolf. Over the years, these used book merchants became as much a staple of the area as the arch that announced the birth of Fifth Avenue. Many years ago, as a young graduate student, I sat upstairs in those very university classrooms and watched an old man in a gray jacket lecture away. Herbert Schiller's lectures argued of a corporate conspiracy to turn all television viewers into mindless corporate consumers. Most other grad students would argue in favor or opposition. I never really liked conspiracy theories because they demanded too much logic from life, but I never missed any of his classes. The man was a rare species in academia, a true intellectual. While our academic engagements were few and brief, I was always inspired by the very fact that such a senior gentleman could be so passionate about academics. At the time, I held no such passion for anything in life except for women, and, perhaps, literature. That semester I spent in his class impacted my life far beyond the hours I spent in the library. One day, I picked up a young Asian woman just an hour before Schiller's class. We met in a local university hangout on 4th Street. Her table positioned next to mine, she struck up a pointless conversation in order to get my attention. "Excuse me, can I borrow your salt, please?" "What?" "Can I borrow your salt?" She smiled. "Oh, yeah, sure thing. I tell you what, you can also have my pepper." My attempts at humor never failed to fail. I thought she was Cambodian or perhaps Peruvian, but she explained that her parents were from the Philippines. "Are you a student here?" I asked. "No, I just came down here for lunch." "Where do you live?" "The Bronx." "That's a long way just for lunch." "Are you kidding me? This place has the best tofu noodles in the city." "Best noodles, my ass." I knew exactly what she was looking for. A rich, educated, private university kind of guy who would take good care of her skinny ass. I couldn't blame her. I always thought that such a trade would not be rejected by most men. The temptation of a young Asian from the Bronx with her ghetto talk and tight blue jeans is not an easy one to refuse. But why me? From all the rich kids running around the campus, why did she choose a broke-ass Israeli who was living off student loans? Couldn't she tell us apart? Why would anyone try to hustle the ultimate hustlers? She should have gone for a nice Jewish American kid from the law school, or perhaps the MBA track. Any of those guys would do. Any of them would be up for the trade. I'm sure they would all quickly sign their names on the dotted line to close this deal. But would she fit into their worlds? What would happen if they took her back home to their circle of friends? I could see it now. Let's say Seth, Josh, or Aaron brings her back and introduces her to his friends. They sit around with his buddies and their Long Island girlfriends, already planning their doomed weddings. With a big smile on his face, Seth, Josh, or Aaron shows off this young Asian beauty who everyone knows gives a much better head than those great-neck princesses who wouldn't put it in their mouths unless their men pay up with promises of long-term commitments. "You wouldn't want to be with a young bimbo like that, would you, honey?" the other ladies would ask their men. "Of course not, dear. She's not half the woman you are." "Yeah, right. Maybe if they were referring to size." The liars. If given only half the chance, they'll all take the trade in a second. When a man enters a car dealership, he automatically walks over to the convertible sports car that spells out his dreams in the form of tight leather seats and a twin-turbo engine. If life were only a little different, they would say, I'd buy me a car like this and cruise around the old neighborhood like a king. After an imaginary trip on the Jersey Turnpike with a large-breasted blonde who gave head at 98 miles per hour, the guy walks out, away from the savvy sports machine, and towards the old family wagon. Like his father before him and his grandfather a generation earlier, the man leaves his dreams to die in the red convertible and walks out of the dealership with the keys to a Ford Taurus. This tragic pattern often repeats itself in the female selection process. Most men simply settle for something completely different and decidedly less than what they dream of. I continued to talk to this young Asian, discussing Hemingway over a plate of tofu noodles. God, I hated that shit. It's supposed to be healthy for you, and yet it left you with this bland taste in your mouth. We chatted for about an hour. After 2 cups of coffee, she asked me to go to the Union Square Market where she wanted to buy some Indian rolled incense. Apparently, hand-rolled incense was much better for you than the ones you bought in the mall. Those in the mall are full of chemicals, she explained. The Indian ones are made only of natural spices. I would have most likely banged that chick if I bothered to join her on her shopping trip. Instead, I chose to go to old man Schiller's class and listen to him lecture about how corporate America was taking over the universe. I never failed to miss out on opportunities to get laid, but the exchange between knowledge and sex was always problematic for me. I knew that, as a man, I was supposed to want to screw anything that I could, any woman who came across my path. As a man, you never could say no, even if you weren't really interested. I was guided by such logic for many years, but no longer. After Mari, things changed forever.